Aloha and welcome to Island Connections. I'm Ibrahim Aoude. Ethnic Studies, 40 years on. This is the second program in a couple of months. Like September, we had the program, the Year of Ethnic Studies. And this one is the second program about ethnic studies as we celebrate the Year of Ethnic Studies proclaimed by the legislature, this year's legislature. 2010 is the Year of Ethnic Studies in Hawaii. So I have three guests who have witnessed a lot of development in ethnic studies, some of them from the beginning of the department's establishment in 1970. Roy Takumi, representative, Hawaii State Legislature, and John Witeck, Human Resource Specialist and Community Activist, Specialist at UH Mānoa, and Eric Gill, Secretary Treasurer, Local 5, Unite Here. Thank you all for coming. I want to say also that Eric Gill would be catching a flight, so he has to leave at 8:30, halfway into the program. But for sure, we'll have you speak longer, but not for half an hour. So what I want to do is go to first your introduction to ethnic studies and how did you come about to be involved with ethnic studies. We start with you, Roy.
For me, Ibrahim, it was I transferred to the university from Leeward Community College. I went there for the first few years of my college education. And I got involved with ethnic studies. I met a few people, and it really resonated with me. As you well know, the whole slogan and motto of ethnic studies is our history, our way. And it's not to say that someone else's version of history is not important, but it's critical to point out that for far too long, history has been presented from the perspective of military generals or corporate executives or presidents or movers and shakers, so to speak, and very rarely from the perspective of those who really make society work. Working people, women, and so on and so forth. So that really resonated with me.
Great. And John, you've been from the beginning of the development and the struggle for ethnic studies.
Well, I was involved in the anti-war movement at UH, and from that I met a lot of the activists who later played a leading role in forming the movement for ethnic studies. So there were demonstrations and rallies and marches and occupations of Bachman Hall, pretty much like we were doing for the moratorium and the anti-war movement. And I was just inspired to find people who really wanted to provide to young people a truer history, a people's history of their backgrounds. And I've been interested in labor history, and so ethnic studies for me has also provided a lot of that. So I was in some of the sit-ins and involved in some of the, I teach ethnic studies occasionally, so yeah. It's a great program.
Yeah, and you also wrote about ethnic studies, the development of ethnic studies in a social process in Hawaii volume about the ethnic studies story, we called it.
The origins
politics
of that.
And social movements in Hawaii. Well, Eric, you have also been involved, in terms of labor activism and activism in general as a student and later on as a worker. So could you talk about that?
Oh, when I was a young man going to school and going to class, and I recall, reading these textbooks and how overthrowing the Queen was such a good thing that happened to people and how it brought American laws and justice and, all that kind of stuff, and it never rang right. And then as I got older, I was witness to many of the things John just talked about. As a young man, I saw anti-war movement. I saw, in high school, the occupation of Kalama Valley and other things that raised real basic questions about what we know about ourselves and what we know about society and politics and so on. So when I got to university age, what was true at that time was that the university and the ethnic studies program were kind of the center, kind of the core of an activist community of dedicated activists that were fighting for social change. I found that tremendously attractive, and in fact, that's why I decided to go to the university. And sure enough, I went to the university and got so active I didn't have time to go to class, and I had to Go somewhere else.
I got kicked out too.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's why, like, administration in those days loved us so much because, you know, we were making trouble, quote unquote, because we didn't want to toe the line in terms of the history that was being taught and so forth. What I want to do is I interviewed interim Dean Edward Schultz. He's in the School of Pacific and Asian Studies, and his involvement with ethnic studies and so forth. So we'll do that, and then we can discuss.
As I watched the program develop here on campus, I was at West Oahu at that time, but I was always kind of intrigued by the fact that they're trying to look at history from the downside, from basically the sense of what the laborer was doing. So often history in the United States, academia in the United States has been viewing the world from the elite perspective, and this was sort of taking a different turn, asking some new questions and trying to understand the way the average person might respond. And of course in Hawaii it becomes a natural because of the whole way we were dominated for so long by the Big Five and basically the major capitalist powers. And we had the labor movement, the whole Democratic Party movement, which sort of was trying to topple that authority. So it made a very nice entrance into Hawaii. I started to teach at West Oahu some ethnic studies type courses, such as Japanese in Hawaii. And then when at that time the professor Franklin Odo took leave, he brought me over to do some courses with the ethnic studies program on the Manoa campus. And once again, I was really struck by first of all, the enthusiasm of all the faculty for what they were doing, and the desire to become involved in the community, and to Manoa is often accused of being an ivory tower with very few contacts in the community, and ethnic studies faculty and students were trying to do the exact opposite. They were trying to make the community a part of their curriculum, and their curriculum a part of the community. And so it was, to me, it was a very important and very pleasant way to invest yourself intellectually and also with the community. It was a very, very good cross-section. And the beauty, when I taught the course Japanese in Hawaii here, it was a little different from the way I taught it at West Oahu, in part because here we used a lot of TAs, teaching assistants, basically juniors and seniors who had taken the course and then wanted to go back and bring the sophomore and juniors into the program. And I found it really intriguing because these were young people who were very, very interested in what Hawaii was doing. They were somewhat politically motivated, but they were also very socially conscious. And to me, that's the real hallmark of the ethnic studies program, is it sort of grabs students, it gets students involved in the community, gets them out into the community, and gets them thinking about issues that are important to the community and to the larger community as well. So that has always been, to me, the highlight of ethnic studies. And it's something which I think we see increasingly other departments picking up on that, particularly as now so-called service learning has become a more important part of the curriculum. Ethnic studies kids were doing service learning from the time the program began.
Yeah, so it's an interesting pedagogic philosophy, different from the regular, like, I am the pontificator and you are the students, you know, and all that. Although, you know, we lecture too, but I mean, but we don't pontificate, or we try not to. So, you know, I mean, John, you have recent experience in teaching ethnic studies. Do you want to say something about how you conducted the course? And
I was privileged to teach the social movements course, which is, I think, an exciting course because it's about all those movements of people that made our history, the people from the bottom up affecting change. The labor movement is the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the various ethnic struggles for equality, the transgendered and gay lesbian struggle. And I found the students that I had in my course had been in other ethnic studies courses. And they all had their stories about how their eyes were open, for the first time. In high school, they never heard any of this. And recently, I've been teaching at the community college as well. And I put into my curriculum things I learned from ethnic studies, work that has been done by ethnic studies. And that's been exciting because for a lot of these people, middle age or even older people, they never, maybe their grandfather told them some of this, but they've never really had a concentrated presentation on it. The other thing I've seen is, and what I loved about ethnic studies is the students went out in the community. They were more than learning, they were also organizing. They were, they were learning from the people and they were giving back. And I think ethnic studies was the one program that sort of incorporated or taught or really acted on the idea that students can be a transmission or can be a go-between ideas and the people. And because we saw that in ethnic studies in Chinatown and Waipahu, Aoude Camp, Waihole, Waikani, we saw this being done.
Yeah,
and then they'd come back to the university and they'd become lecturers, or they would become teaching assistants or union leaders or whatever, legislators.
Right, right. So, Roy, you want to tell us something about your experiences also, like specific? And also, I would like to ask you, since you are in the education part and at the legislature, the committees, how come, like, for instance, we don't push ethnic studies in, like, lower education, like, say, I don't know, middle school or high school, etc. So
I'll take that, your last question first. The legislature does not dictate the curriculum for the public education system. That's for the Board of Education.
Right.
They set the standards. And as you all know, as part of our state constitution, we have a mandate to teach Hawaiian culture. And so that manifests itself in many ways in our curriculum. But frankly, I don't think the legislature should play a role in dictating curriculum. If you might remember, Michigan, the legislature a few years ago went into special session because they couldn't determine whether or not they should teach Kwanzaa, they should teach all these politically correct things. And legislators are not the best judges of what to teach in the schools. But I want to take off on what John was saying and what I said earlier about our history, our way. And when people ask me what ethnic studies really is, I always tell them, we have that expression, you say, oh, look at the cat playing with the mouse. And the mouse has an entirely different worldview of that situation, clearly. And so what ethnic studies to me is, while it's important to talk about the cat, it's also very important to talk about the world from the perspective of that mouse. And so similarly, when you say one of the teachable moments for me in ethnic studies was, and I don't know if they still use this, but there was this photo of Dole, and he was standing in front of acres of pineapples behind him. The caption was Dole and his pineapples, or something like that. And the teaching assistant said, how many pineapples do you think he planted? And it made me really think. The answer was, of course, 0. And while his story is important, and of course it's in history, what about the stories of those people that planted all of those pineapples? And so you fast forward to today, and we'll see Donald Trump and the building he built or whatever. No, he got the financing. He did certain things to make sure that project happened. But it was thousands of workers that built that hotel or whatever that development was. And their stories are just as important to American history as well.
yeah, no, when I asked you about, like, from your perspective as a legislature, how come we don't have ethnic studies, like, and should we have ethnic studies in lower education, so to speak? That's why I was asking.
If you go to the Department of Education website and if you look at the curriculum in all the different grades, you will see certain aspects of ethnic studies. Now, do they teach it the way perhaps that the Ethnic Studies Department does? That I don't know, but one could argue that the University of Hawaii itself doesn't really approach the teaching of history in the way that the Ethnic Studies Department does as well.
That's why, and that's why, like, it is all the more necessary to have ethnic studies on campus, and being part of the strategic plan of the University of Hawaii and the criteria for development of critical thinking and so forth. Well, Eric, I want to ask you about your relationships with ethnic studies currently, because, I mean, we've been doing a number of things together, so if you would care to talk about those.
I would. I'd like to lead up to it, though. I think that when you talk about our history, our way, which is, of course, that is the basic fighting slogan, I guess, that was used by activists in terms of launching a program. It's a demand, in essence, by people whose history isn't being told to say, hey, we want our history told. And I think that that's what gives it the ethnic piece, if you will. But what was attractive to me about the program from the start was the fact that, when you talk about ethnic studies in Hawaii, you're talking about ethnic groups, in essence, that were brought here as workers. And so our history is as working people, the Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, you name it, including white people for the most part, were brought here as workers. And when you talk about their history, then you have to talk about their history of how, as workers, they became able to improve and develop a full place in the community. And so it's really a history of the working class. And it's a snapshot of different pieces of the working class, but what tied it all together, at least when I was in ethnic studies, I found that that's what was eye-opening to me, was the fact that you could get a working class perspective of history. And it was from different angles of different ethnic groups, but they all had a common experience as workers. And so that was very rare, and I think that's really the problem of why it's not in a school system, is because our economy and our society is dominated by rich bankers. They have no interest in training working people about their history or about working class values and ethics, or how working people dealt with previous generations of bankers, for example. Those things are not what they want our children to learn. And in fact, there is no institution in society other than unions, to the extent some unions do it, and programs like this that actually teach a working people's history or working class view of history. And I think that I found that tremendously exciting. And so when I come back now, on occasion I'm asked back to speak, and of course now I'm a union guy. So most times when I'm asked back, I'm asked to speak about labor, right? Labor and history of unions and so on. But what I learned here in ethnic studies, really provided a lot of what I then bring back. Because what I learned here is history of labor, how previous generations of working people were able to deal with the problems they had, and we can learn from that and apply those today in our work in the unions today, which is sorely needed, because this community badly needs a much stronger labor movement than what we have right now.
Great, thanks. What I want to do now is go to a segment when I interviewed Ula Hassager, who's a lecturer at Ethnic Studies, and also she's the coordinator of service learning projects at Ethnic Studies and in the College of Social Sciences. So we'll do that and then we'll move forward.
I originally wanted to work with ethnic studies when I came to Hawaii the first time, for a number of reasons. One, of course, that I knew Marian Kelly already, but also that I was looking for a place that were involved in the community. And being an anthropologist, ethnic studies was a pretty obvious place to put my energy. So ethnic studies is a department that's not only doing research in the community, but also actually working in the community and with the community, which is in line with a paradigm shift that I see happening in academia in general, but particularly in social sciences.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ula is originally Danish, but she's been here since 1990, 91, and her association with ethnic studies and with Marian Kelly, who trailblazed the whole school of anthropology, all by herself practically. So she has a European perspective on things, and when she came to Hawaii, she saw that ethnic studies was the place to be for her own research, etc. What I want to do also before we go forward is go to another segment I did with Miriam Sharma. She's professor of Asian Studies here at UH, but also she was a director of ethnic studies for a year in the 70s. So we'll do that, and then we can talk more about it.
8 years on, so almost a decade on, it should have been well established, but they had certain people in positions of power who just were not very happy with it. And so it was a time of really fighting for the life of the program and to maintain its direction. And so I think that was very important that ethnic studies remains as a, used to be a thorn in the side of the administration. Over the many decades, most of these programs here and elsewhere, even the women's studies programs, have become less of a thorn, and I think everybody recognizes have become a little more mainstream, and the broader political, social context has changed, not only in Hawaii, but on the continent and elsewhere. So the ways in which academia can make pinpricks have changed than the good old, or the old days. But it was very important to be always a voice of, not dissent for dissent's sake, but I would say, and I wouldn't say a voice of truth, since truth is relative, but a voice of commitment and of integrity and of speaking for, or at least getting the views and other people's ideas out there in the university as well as in the community.
Well, I mean, that's the perspective along the lines we have been talking about. We have a caller from Hilo, Dwight from Hilo. Aloha, brother. You're on the air.
Hello.
Aloha.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I do research and I was looking into the plantations and what they were doing. And a lot of people don't realize that the plantations brought over slavery to the Hawaiian kingdom. The first slaves were the Chinese and the Japanese. And during Kalakaua's reign, the plantations went over to Europe to recruit what I call slave mercenaries. That was the Germans and the Portuguese back in 1776. And that was part of the overthrow right there. When they got the plantations started building the slave army to run the slave plantation and take over the Hawaiian kingdom. Well, even after the overthrow, when the Queen had signed the lottery bill into law, and the Americans decided to throw out because of that, they had continued slavery. It continues even today, people don't know. Because the word employee, if you look in the underworkers' comp, it actually goes back to common law, master and servant. So what you hear about slavery was illegal and all that under the 13th Amendment. They just reinvented it after the Industrial Revolution. And all they did was call you an employee. You're working without a contract, and that's what the work comp is there for.
Okay.
It was to deny you the right to contract, and you can't sue the employer.
Yeah, great.
So what happened is everybody got to be slaves after a while, even till today, this very day. So
okay.
Comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mahalo for your perspective. Anyway, these have been along the lines that we are talking about. Why don't I go to another one? This one is related to you because this is a former student and ethnic studies major of ours who works as an organizer in Local 5. Say hi to Abby.
Yes.
So we will watch that and then we have more discussion.
I took a social movements course, so that had given me a little bit of a history of unions and immigration, why people come to the U.S., right, specifically in Hawaii. So then I could just see the link, even today, the recent immigrants, their challenges at work and the jobs that they get, why it's usually, a menial job, right, because they're just happy to have one. So just having that academic background helps each day. Well, the first class I took was Middle East, and that was from you. And that one just opened me up to just learning about history, right? The day-to-day, what you learn in the newspapers, what you see in the newspapers, and tying it into what's really happening. So, I mean, how it influences my academic, well, from the start, from Middle East course, I took all ethnic studies courses. So it was a big impact. And I didn't start having so much focus until I took that course. And I had taken 4 years worth.
Well, here, there's a connection here, like John Sehaitu was in your social movement class, yeah?
Very good
Right,
student,
yeah.
yes.
But also, you want to say something about the organizing and stuff, and
Yeah,
how it
sure.
relates to the academy and, you know, students?
Yeah,
and
sure.
stuff?
Look, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there really is no institution in society other than a few unions that do that, and ethnic studies and certain programs here that actually train our young people to have an appreciation of labor history, and want to become organizers of working people. And the truth is, it's very hard to find people that want to do this for a living. You know, we work pretty hard for pretty little, and you have to want a better world, and you have to want to advance working people, and you have to really want that in order to devote your life to it. We're not getting rich doing this. So when we get Sehaitu, we've got several others actually that we've been able to hire from the university. Many of them had ethnic studies. We've had interns. We had a bunch of interns this summer helping us get ready for the current difficulties we're having with the hotel corporations. And all the help we can get finding young people, you know, who are willing to go out and fight for working people. We appreciate it. And so Sehaitu is a very promising prospect for us. You know, what they learn here, we can add on to, teach the practicality of it. How to organize is a lot of learning there. It's a lifetime of learning how to organize and lead. But there's nothing more important in my view than finding, recruiting, training working class leaders. That's what's needed. It's the working class that needs leaders in order to develop its rightful place. We're the majority. We should have political power. We don't. And a lot of it is because we don't have enough leaders able to effectively organize workers to work together and use the numbers that we have. And so there's nothing more important in my view than finding, recruiting, and training people willing to do that. And I'm grateful to ethnic studies and frankly anybody else who will send us promising youth. You know, I don't think every generation of working people wants their children to do better, right? We work hard, get up, go to work, get oppressed every day, keep going for 50 years just so our kids can have a chance for a better life. But we also want our kids to remember what got them there, which is the hard work of working people. That the only reason we have a university, the only reason we have an ethnic studies program is the hard work of working people and their ability to move society through united action, and that takes leaders, and we'll take any number of them. Ethnic studies, send them on down.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say something along the lines you were talking about, like our history, our way, and that is I tell colleagues of mine, other chairs in the College of Social Sciences and so forth, that the community, when we talk about community and the university serving community, it is not only the community of the banks and the tourist industry, etc., which is okay. They want to do it fine. But also, as you said, the mouse, so to speak, the other people, the community that nobody really deals with, really in a real way, etc. And so, if we are a multi-ethnic, multi-racial community, society, we have to, impart to students what we call positive ethnic identity, in the sense that I'm proud of who I am, but I respect you as Chinese, Japanese, what have you, and I respect the commonalities, and I recognize the commonalities among us. So that creates the groundwork for peace in the community and the development for all and for the benefit of all, not only for the benefit of few. So I just wanted to say that along the lines of our history, our way, not only one history, but all kinds of histories from all kinds of perspectives. Would you want to comment more on?
Well, I think obviously the person that really brought that to culmination was Howard Zinn. And as we know, when he wrote A People's History of the United States, which was published in 1980, 10 years after Ethnic Studies here was founded, again, he put into a scholarly journal, a book, sold over 1 million copies so far. He passed away this year, as you know. And it was a history of the paupers and not the princes necessarily, and the workers and not necessarily the corporate titans. I'll give you one story. When I remember years ago when I was asked to give a talk at the university, I was at a graduate school class in history. And I just go around and talking to the students before the class, and this young lady, I said, oh, so why are you taking graduate classes at the university? And she said, well, I don't want to be a bus driver. And the way she said it was indicative to me that she just thought, who'd want to do that? And I told her, you know, the next time you ever get on a bus, you should thank that bus driver, because if it weren't for that bus driver, you wouldn't be here. This institution is run by over 80% from taxes, from people like that bus driver, that housekeeper at that hotel, you know. So you ought to thank them. Frankly, if someone came to me and said, here's some money so that you can go to university and you don't owe me anything, I'd be very grateful for that. Well, that's what I think all the students here at a public institution owes to everybody else in this community. And I hope that they really remember that. Otherwise, you come away from this university experience thinking you got here and you did this on your own. Well, nobody does anything on their own.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is go to a student of ours in ethnic studies whom I interviewed, and she talks about her particular experience with ethnic studies. And I see the clock is like 8:31, 57 seconds. So as we're playing this, we will say aloha to you, and we wish you a safe trip. Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Ethnic studies plays a big role at UH. It may not be a very big department, but I think when students come in, they really enjoy it, and then they tend to take more classes. Like me, I only took it in the beginning, and then now I'm majoring in it. So I think it really plays an impact on the academy. Through the Ethnic Studies department, we volunteer for different events, or at like the homeless shelter, Next Step program. We also do, I'm in the Japanese and Hawaii class right now. We go to JCCH, and you're supposed to help with the exhibits, and it's just a way to help the ethnic community, especially because of the different diversity within the community. Through the Ethnic Studies Student Association, we allow students to be involved in the community with professors giving them feedback or what they should be involved in. We've had concerts that have like conscious hip hop. We also volunteered at the Hawaii Plantation Village, and it was just a good experience for all the students to be like engrossed into the culture.
So we're now reorganized. Yeah, moving to the left, which is good. Actually, the university is moving to the right, but we are moving to the left, which is good. It's being reorganized, the university, by the way. Anyway, this is just one perspective of Jasmine Fernandez, who is also a teacher of what we have like freshman seminar courses, and she and two other people do it, take sections of freshman seminar for ES 101, the introductory course, and they are responsible for creating the syllabus, everything, you know, teaching and so forth. So it creates like confidence and leadership capability, etc. This is some of the things we're doing, but they do it this semester under my supervision, you know. And next semester will be under supervision of someone else and so forth. So these are important things that we do for students, you know, to make them like better understand the material that they studied like the semester before or two semesters before and got A's in it and so on. So I just wanted to say that. But what I want to do also is go to another segment with another student teacher, Maria de Guzman, and she talks about ES also.
One of my thoughts is that I feel that an ethnic studies course should be required, for, not only students at the University of Hawaii, but I think, across the United States. We're supposed to be a country where, we're blind to race, but the fact of the matter is that not everyone is, and it's because they don't have an opportunity to learn about diverse populations. They only know the people that are in their town, and not all of the towns in the United States are diverse. So I think because a lot of people don't take the opportunity to study abroad, at least learning, within their own university about different ethnicities, and maybe being able to, I guess, become more familiar, more comfortable with different races, then the United States can move towards being more race blind as it would like to be. And so definitely ethnic studies should be one of those departments that the university tries to emphasize to its students.
Yeah, actually Maria is an American Studies major, but she is also an ES certificate student because we not only have the major BA but also certificate. So she's taking courses with us and she likes it. She would have wanted to become like a double major, but she's about to graduate, so she cannot do that. But these are interesting perspectives. In terms of your observation of the university now and those kinds of perspectives that, different people that we have interviewed, and we talked about it here, talk about ethnic studies. Like in terms of, your vision as a policymaker and legislator and someone who's involved in the community as well. Where would you see the vision in terms of ethnic studies for the next 5 years in terms of the political economy development of Hawaii?
Well, I think the point you raised earlier, Ibrahim, about one of the goals of the ethnic studies program is to promote a positive ethnic identity. And I know some people might say, well, you're just playing the race card or you're trying to divide people purely on the basis of their ethnic background. And that's far from the truth. I think, again, the whole perspective of ethnic studies is to show people you can be proud, no matter who you are, where you come from. There's things in your culture and your traditions that you can be proud of. But that said, I think we also have to recognize we live in a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-class society in Hawaii. And I think for far too long, especially over the past 8 years, in this state and nationally, we see people getting divided, whether it's on the Tea Party politics or wedge issues, social issues and whatnot, and failing to realize that we're one nation. And in this state, we're one state, and we should look at the common ground that we have. And we have far more in common. We all want, as Eric said, a better life for our children. We all want a high-quality public education system. We all want a good economy, a clean environment, and so on and so forth. And so we should look at what unites us rather than what divides us. And part of that is to come to the table feeling that you have something to offer, positive, not superior now, but positive to offer that. And I think some of the time in the public policy arena, we've lost that. It's more about how can I get you, how can I wedge the issue, how can I use that. I'll give you one small example. On the federal level, I think we all know that no Republican voted for the Obama health care proposal. Now, yet Republicans voted for Social Security under Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And so there was a time back in the 1930s in this country, even though a president like Franklin Delano Roosevelt proposed what today the Tea Party types would say is just pure socialism, and yet they were able to cross the aisle and realize what's for the common good of this country. My fear is that, particularly at the federal level, but we see some of that aspects in this election, by the way, at the local level, people tend to focus in on one single issue or a wedge issue and hope to use that to divide the community rather than looking at, again, what unites us and looking for common solutions.
Yeah, a lot of people, like in the United States, are looking at Obama and say, is he really American? Or maybe he's a Muslim, But, as, people said, so what if he were a Muslim? After all, we are all Americans, so that's another issue. And in fact, Colin Powell, General Colin Powell said that I heard him on, I watched him on TV say, what if he were a Muslim? So would he be disqualified from becoming president of the United States? So, but this is the thing for why positive ethnic identity is very important. And, you know, being accused of like playing the race card is not, I agree with you, it's not the way, because I mean, race is being used by the other guys. So what we have to fight by educating people that we should have like a humanistic kind of worldview, that all people are equal and shouldn't be judged by the color of their skin and all that. You know, Martin Luther King, after all, you know, that's part of American history, so I just wanted to make that. Any other comments, John, on that?
I think the issue, I think you hit it on equality, and but I think ethnic recognition is important. I think the Tea Party and the right is saying all this ethnic awareness is bad, whereas they're playing the race card very openly, primarily a predominantly white movement, which is very threatened by the fact that the majority in this country will probably be non-white, if not already. So I think ethnic studies is under attack in some states, and in Hawaii I think it's made a major contribution, so you have people appreciate it in the legislature and other places. But I think ethnic studies has sort of been the most out there progressive department on campus, and it probably in this, as we go into the next 40 years, there are things that can be done, and I think we have a lot of visiting new students from other places and faculty who don't have a clue often about the ethnic contributions of people here. So I don't think we need to be race blind, but we need to promote what is unique and special about Hawaii, and that's one of these things. And also, I think ethnic studies is very different in that the community came on campus and demanded it. So people from Chinatown, from Waipahu, from Waihole, they came back here and said, we want this because this is our program. And every time they tried to get rid of the program, the people would rally and the students and the faculty would help invite people back, and they would come, and that's very special.
And and I think you know, there are some people here, sometimes some of them in position of power, who would like to see ethnic studies go, and it has been said to me that, and some people in you know, other departments want to do that. Those who claim that they are on the progressive side of things, etc., not knowing that, I mean, one could see obviously the need for that kind of education, the one we've been talking about, in such a climate that is, you know, race baiting is happening, like all kinds of discrimination against all kinds of minorities. That's when you need to have more ethnic studies kind of courses and strengthen ethnic studies rather than like dilute it, wipe it out, and so forth. And this is something that we have to deal with. And I have to thank you again, like publicly, for introducing the resolution in the House, and for Senator Brian Tanegoshi to introduce the resolution in the Senate about proclaiming 2010 the Year of Ethnic Studies. It shows that you and your colleagues really understand what needs to be happening in Hawaii in terms of promoting that kind of society that has a humanistic you know, framework of looking at the world and a humanistic point of, you know, worldview. And this is the thing that I think all administrators here on campus, in terms of the strategic plan of the university, etc., should promote that, because after all, we are a multi-ethnic community. How can you deny that and not have it as part of this public institution? And I think this is very important. Yeah. So what I want to do is go to another ES major who also teaches 101 class under, you know, my supervision this semester, etc. He and Maria and Jasmine each have a section of 10 students each who are freshmen. That's why we call it freshman seminar. We do that.
I feel like ethnic studies is especially important in Hawaii, since we do have like one of the most diverse ethnic like backgrounds. Cause like there's so many of my friends that were like so many different, like at least 2 or 3 different racial backgrounds. that it's like, well, I'm like, well, I'm like come from one, I'm like full Japanese. And the majority of my friends were all mixed. Like I had a lot of like Filipino Chinese friends, I had a lot of Japanese Filipino friends. I think that maybe they should change the E from like ethical to maybe like an ethnic requirement. Because like as far as ethical like situations go, I mean, you should be learning ethical things from all your classes here at Mānoa. But I feel like they should incorporate like some sort of like E, like not just like the Hawaiian exactly. There's like the Hawaiian, the H credit that is required. I think they should require like maybe an E in addition to that.
Which is ethnic.
Yeah, a different E. Just so like, cause I mean, if students from the mainland or from international students come to Hawaii and they just learn about the Hawaiians, they don't learn like maybe some of the other races and the histories that have gone on in this place, then they won't really grasp the concept of why certain things are the way they are.
Yeah, I mean, I put that segment on because he hit it on the head. We have what we call at the UH focus designation courses. You have to take Hawaii Asia Pacific focus, you have to take ethical, oral, writing intensive, all are good. But his case is that the E should not be ethical because you should take it from all classes, but the E should be ethnic. And this is, I think, a shortcoming at the University of Hawaii in the sense that they focus on the Hawaiian, which is important, and we fully support that. And in fact, ethnic studies was the precursor for other programs like women's studies, Hawaiian studies, etc., and now the School of Hawaiian Knowledge. And we are in full support of their development and so on. But the fact of the matter, we are a multi-ethnic society. So the university should have that E focus, meaning ethnic studies focus as well. So that's where he hit it, on the head. So any, like from your work, in the community, how do you see your vision of Hawaii also, say in the next 5-10 years, regarding progressive change and the change that really counts along the lines we're talking about?
I see the university is supposed to serve the community. Community pays for it. And some programs have a lot of direct connection with the community. Ethnic studies, I think, historically has had. And the ethnic studies connection is was so critical for the social movement that happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And I think that's important to reignite if there is going to be a social movement forward. I think students and youth play an important role, and ethnic studies is one of the few departments, I think, that raises consciousness and gives a sense of mission, it gives a sense of identity. I know Local 5, Eric can't be here, but on building support for a possible strike of hotels, ethnic studies is a good audience. You come in and speak to the students. Some of them are interns, some of them are helping to organize. Ethnic studies has provided and should provide even more of that resource if they can. The one other level I would love to see ethnic studies play is to have organizers training. In other words, have a training institute. Ethnic studies sort of opens the eyes and people go, hey, wow, I didn't know. But the next step is how can people develop skills for organizing, fundraising, writing flyers, doing slideshows, going on Facebook. Yeah. How could and I think ethnic studies could do that and could help seed again, bring resources to that community movement, and that can unite with Local 5, with churches, with progressive politicians, etc., and build a healthy communities coalition or alliance. Yeah. And I think the ES is that place in the university that can really help do it.
Yeah, and even though that might put us in a precarious situation with the administration because they're moving to the right in those matters, privatizing the university in a big way and stuff like that. But still, this is all the more reason why ethnic studies
and the community would fight for you. If you're fighting for them, they will fight for you.
Yeah,
that's what they've done in the past.
Yeah, I know. I'm envisioning like a lot of workers, like if something happens, a lot of workers would come and take over something here. I mean, I could see that happen, yeah. But anyway, I want to go to Ed Schultz, also the interim dean, and he's talking about social studies needs to exploit ES point of view. So we'll talk about that.
But I would feel the social studies area needs to fully exploit that point of view, from the ethnic studies point of view. And I think they can do it in part when they do the history of Hawaii. I think there's several times in the curriculum when Hawaii's history is actually studied in the schools. And that would be the perfect entree into looking at some of the issues of individual ethnicities. I think they need to know the general framework of where we went from, a kingdom to a territory to a state in that process. But I think within that, they also need to understand the individual ethnic histories of these people. And maybe the average student won't know them all, but they can certainly learn their own and at least one other and use that for comparative purposes.
Yeah, so I mean, along the lines we're talking about. By the way, I wanted to say in terms of celebrating ethnic studies, we've been doing a number of events this semester. At the university, some of the events was like the September show, Island Connections, and this show, but we also had a panel, and we're going to have like a student panel in October, and in November, panel with workers and other community activists. But the big event, the 3-in-1, is a December 2nd event. And this is, we'll have a dedication of the resource room at the department in honor and memory of Akwan Makarath. And then we're going to have like a reception, an hour reception with music and hula dancing, etc., at the architecture building courtyard. And then a panel of ethnic studies majors who have graduated a long time ago. One of them is a judge, the other one is in OHA, and the other one is with the ILWU, Secretary-Treasurer Fujimura. And, so that would be something to look forward to, and we're gonna be inviting a lot of people, like maybe 1,000 people, hopefully. A lot of people would show up and so on. So we're having those things to say, for instance, thank you for 40 years of ethnic studies at the University of Hawaii, and as we say, ho'omau, continuing. So that is, I just wanted to say that along the lines that you were talking about with the community and so on, yeah. So in terms of the vision, yeah, I mean, let's talk about, because ethnic studies was established given the struggles of Hawaii's people. Okay, in terms of the vision for Hawaii, now we're not talking about ethnic studies, but for Hawaii, how would you see that? How would you like to see that, given the circumstance extent? And what should the academy play? What role should the academy play in that?
Yeah, I think part of the challenge for Hawaii, and I think that's a part of the challenge for the United States in general, is this whole issue of technology. I think, we're of the generation where, faxes came about and so on. And when I see my 8-year-old grandson now, and he's on Facebook, and he has an email address. When I was 8 years old, I didn't get any mail, so I wouldn't need an address, and I wouldn't know how to use the phone because it was one of those rotary dial things. And technology is moving far quicker, and when, many people in the American public could probably name you when Lindsay Lohan gets out of jail rather than what's the policy to get us out of the war in Afghanistan. We should be very troubled by this because it takes time and patience to know history. And I always tell people, in order to look forward, you got to look backwards, right? And if you know history, you can make history. And if you know the mistakes of the past, you can avoid, not eliminate, but avoid some of the mistakes in the future. And that's part of my concern. I think many people today, and I talk to many, even colleagues in the legislature, who are younger, and you talk about the 1946 sugar strike or the 1938 Hilo massacre, and it's much less than 1954 Democratic Party revolution that happened in this state. What is that? You might also be talking, reading them the Dead Sea Scrolls or something. They just have no clue what you're talking about. And that should worry us, because in order, you have to know these things. In 1946, we all know, because of that sugar strike, 70 plus days, that really united people from different ethnicities and so on, that gave rise to the ILWU. Now today, when some people talk about unions, or what do unions do, what good are they, all this sort of stuff. Well, if you know that history, you might come up with a different perspective about the relevance and importance of organized labor, even in today's society. But without knowing that history, you might miss that. And because again, we are bombarded with images and with messages and with Fox News and with Glenn Beck and all these type of media, that it's very difficult to really discern what's out there and what's objective.
Yeah. John, anything on that vision?
No, I would agree. I've just been amazed at the Local 5, seeing some of the interns and students who are helping, is they know how to do all this stuff that I don't do. So they can come and put together a video, you know, in a couple of days, whereas Roy and it would be a 5-month project for us. So to some extent, you know, that ethnic studies, or students today, can be that resource, and without them, I think it would be very hard to really build the social.
And let me interrupt you, John.
Yeah, sure.
Part of the challenge is, if you look at the population, the student body of the University of Hawaii, relative to the number of students that take ethnic studies, I mean, what percentage are we talking about, Ibrahim?
Yeah, that's right. We teach about 700 students a semester.
What is it, 20,000+ students?
Yeah, around there. So there you go. But at least it's better than nothing.
Oh, no,
that's why.
Don't get me wrong.
No.
Yes.
I'm saying that's why my argument is that we need more resources in ethnic studies to do even more. You see, and we don't have that particular support to the extent that we should, to the extent of the gravity of the situation. You see, and that is a shortcoming of administration here at the university. I mean, I can tell it to anybody, to the chancellor on down. I have no problem telling them that, you know. And I'm telling them that right now. So, yeah, anything else on that? We still have a couple of minutes. We have a lot of stuff to cover, but I mean, you know.
I'm sure you're going to have another program. I was actually invited to the December event, and unfortunately I'm going to be out of town, but I would have loved to be there. I know it's going to be a great event. I hope many people in the community show up.
Yeah, thanks. And it will be taped, you know, the whole thing. In fact, I want to say something about, yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, be good. We can give you a DVD of that to make sure. But I want to say something about Aqua Makarath. In the 26th anniversary of ethnic studies, we held an event at the ILWU hall. She said 3 events that have shaped contemporary Hawaii. One was the unions, especially ILWU. The other one was statehood. And the third one was the establishment of ethnic studies. I mean, I heard that and I was floored by it, you know.
Wow.
So, I mean, we're talking about something that it's not very, I mean, people like us appreciate that, but we have to like keep hammering at it, you know, so that people can understand and we get the resources that we need to do the job that is required.
Absolutely.
You know,
Can he launch a campaign like December 2nd petition? And,
well,
or something, you know, because you have all those community people there.
Yeah. We're flat out of time. Thank you very much for coming, and thanks for our viewers. See you next month. Aloha.